Good evening and welcome to the Legion Cantina. In today's episode, I'm going to be running through the commanders for the Empire faction in Star Wars Legion. So, I've been playing some Empire recently, and it definitely is a very different experience to Rebels. I think you can make arguments about whether or not they're more competitive, etc. But yeah, I thought I'd just give a general overview of the Empire commanders in the video today. So to get started, the first one we'll be talking about is General Veers, and Veers is a support commander essentially, and he has some excellent synergy with vehicles. He's generally going to be sat sort of towards the back of your army, handing out aims and things like that. His main abilities are his guidance ground vehicle, so this will let it perform any action except an attack, essentially. So the combo that I think I've probably mentioned a couple of times before when I've mentioned Veers is you can put a guidance on an ATST, and that's a really nice combination to have. I think ATSTs are not perhaps as survivable as you might like to think. I think they can actually crumble fairly quickly with that 11 health with the white saves, but their firepower can be really impressive, and especially if you're able to get within that range 3, you will be throwing that triple rainbow generally with the surge to hit if you're taking the hammer's pilot, and obviously if you're triggering a standby with the vehicle, it will be inside that range 3. So getting the ability to shoot twice with that vehicle is going to be really powerful and can really help you sort of lock down a section of the battlefield. It is an expensive combo to pull off. Generally, Veers and the ATST together will come up to probably around sort of 220, 230 points, depending on obviously levels of kit you put on the ATST and Veers. But yeah, it is a really nice combo to have, and to a lesser extent, it can work with the Gav tank as well. And there's nothing wrong with a move with a vehicle, for instance, as well. Like with those big bases on the ATST and the Gav tank, they can cover some really decent distance. And yeah, I think he's not the most like exciting commander in the world necessarily, but I think he's a really solid one to have kind of sitting at the back of your army. The other thing obviously is his spotter 3 that you can get. So if you take the binocs on him, his spotter 2 goes up to spotter 3 with the binocs, and 3 aims for just 1 action is generally pretty good. So what I tended to find myself doing when I was using Veers is a sort of double move on turn 1 to get behind some line of sight blocking, but still kind of having line of sight onto the ATST. And then after that, you're pretty much guidancing the standby onto the ATST and then firing out some aims. So generally 1 on Veers, 1 on the ATST, and then 1 on hopefully a shooting unit that you have nearby, maybe some darks or some snows with the iron gun or something like that. In terms of his command cards, I'll talk about them in more detail in a second, but there's nothing special. They're just fairly solid. None of them are like dreadful, but also none of them are that crazy. And when you have the access to some of the command cards you do in Empire, they do feel a bit underwhelming. So it's definitely not a sort of positive aspect of Veers is his command cards. They're just kind of something that comes with him. He gets the standard fare for a commander, so 2 command slots and a gear slot. Generally, as I've said, I'd be taking the binocs with him, and then probably an improvised orders as well. And then you can choose between, same with Leia as I've talked about before, it'll either generally be underworld connections if you've got a merc or 2 running around, or you can always take trusted agent if there's an operative you'd like to give an order to. So yeah, it feels like a really decent combo to have, and generally with that level of kit, similar to Leia, he'll be coming in kind of around that 90-point mark, and he's pretty solid for 90 points. Obviously, that exemplar as well, I probably should have mentioned at the start, is really useful to have around. And his blaster, like, it's not terrible. It's the same as Leia's with that surge to crit. He doesn't get sharpshooter 2, only sharpshooter 1, but generally you're probably going to be good for, I think it's like 2.5 essentially off that, which you'd hope would go to 3 most of the time, but sometimes will only be 2. So in a pinch, it's not the worst thing to have, but yeah, you don't want to be shooting with Veers when you can have the aim generation and the value from that guidance as well. In terms of his survivability, he's pretty decent. Like 5 with red health is okay, and generally you might have a core unit within range of him to give him backup and stuff like that. So he's going to be pretty resistant to most levels of damage. And as I said, behind line of sight blocking, somewhere where he's not going to be shot, and he will generate some really decent value for you. Same as a super attack or Leia or whatever, just sitting at the back, churning out some aims quite efficiently, and yeah, giving that ATST that standby. So yeah, he's just a very solid commander who has some good synergy if you're running vehicles. Without vehicles, I think it's probably not worth the inclusion. I think you would almost definitely go Krennic over Veers. You'd probably go Krennic over Veers anyway most of the time, but if you are running a ground vehicle, there can be some nice synergy there. Go through his command cards. He has his one pip, which is similar to Leia's one pip, essentially just that nice long range attack that you can make either very early on in the game or very late on in the game. It's not that special like this because it's an attack from him. You're probably getting 3 off this with that surge to crit, and it's getting sharpshooter 1. So against white, you probably do 2 wounds. Against red, you probably do 1. Maybe against the vehicle, this can put a couple through, but yeah, this doesn't feel like a great 1-pip and doesn't feel like it will be as impactful as you need a 1-pip to be some of the time. So yeah, this is definitely not a super special command card. Same kind of goes for evasive maneuvers. So basically, it gives a dodge token to a vehicle and they gain nimble. So you can think of this as maybe like adding an extra armor effectively, because obviously this wouldn't work against crits unless they have outmaneuver. Yeah, I mean, you would take the sort of generic Empire 2-pip over this almost always, I think. Like, I think Pin Down, I think that's what it's called. The ability to shuffle tokens back into your opponent's bag is really powerful, and the fact that it's not just units ordered by that card that enables them to do that as well. It can be any support or heavy from Pin Down is also really effective. So again, this one, unless you're running both with Veers as your only commander, then maybe, but yeah, I don't think this is really worthwhile. An Imperial Discipline, if you have stuff that can benefit from a recover, so you've got some, I don't know, some offensive pushes or things running around, then yeah, again, maybe, but this just isn't it. And I think I've been running a bit of Cassian in Rebels recently as well, and it just doesn't feel like there's as much stuff to hit with recover anymore. Maybe there will be more stuff coming in the near future where this does start to make a bit more sense, but I think for now, yeah, there's just none of these feel super impactful. And while none of them are terrible, they're just not quite the kind of flashy command cards that become a positive for other units. Moving across to Gideon, who he doesn't fully live or die by the Dark Troopers, but he has such strong synergy with the Dark Troopers, including his entourage Dark Troopers and his command cards as well that have some synergy with them. That yeah, he just does benefit hugely if the Dark Troopers are good. So the way I'd describe him is he's a kind of slightly supportive character with his command cards and with his observe, for instance, to go along with his ruthless as well. And he also has some decent melee with the Darksaber as well. So he can put in a bit of work. I think you don't want to be relying on him to deal loads of damage. Like his 1-pip's okay, but again, not the kind of thing where you want to be like charging in with him necessarily. You kind of want to use the Darks to do most of your damage if you are running them with Gideon. Getting the entourage on the Dark Troopers is obviously really good. That is a really nice ability to have, and I think if you can squeeze double darks into a list with Gideon, then that does start to make a bit more sense. Ruthless is also situationally a really useful ability. I think getting extra actions is always useful. The fact you have to suffer a wound is a bit rough. Obviously, you can do things with like snow troopers, for instance, especially with Imperial March now, where you could cover a surprising amount of distance. You could do a speed 1 into a speed 2 into a speed 1 or something, and then get that flamethrower off. So there are some nice potential synergy bits, but doing wounds to your own guys never feels great. And maybe I don't know, mega squads and things like that, possibly, but yeah, it's not something that I necessarily would build an army around. He's essentially just a tough guy with his red surging saves, and courage 3, like courage 3 bubble is decent. Obviously, when you have access to a flat courage bubble from Vader, that it doesn't quite stack up as well, but it's still a useful thing to have, and it will at least probably mean you get more action economy from your troopers. In terms of how you'd probably normally kit him out, I think, again, probably occupying one of his command slots, maybe 2 if you need it. So that probably takes him to about 110 points, an improv or a trusted agent or whatever. The Darksaber, he didn't get the Sabine treatment, interestingly, so his is still 15 points. Again, if you are running him with his 1-pip and stuff, maybe it becomes worthwhile, but if it was 5 points, it would be a much more straightforward decision. But as is, don't think it makes quite as much sense, although the immune melee pierce is nice and maybe does buy him a turn or two if he tries to get sniped by a big hero. In terms of his command cards, I've kind of already spoken a bit about his one pip. He does get a decent aim generation to go along with this, so he'll get one aim base and then two more aims to go with that. But again, unless you're running the dark saber, I think this isn't worth it. And even with the dark saber, you probably put, 4 PS1 through, which again on a 1 pip, is that good enough? I don't really know. Like, you have access to some pretty good command cards in Empire potentially, so yeah, maybe this one doesn't quite work. His 2 pip is the sort of most direct example of the synergy with the Dark Troopers. So you can just basically pick one allied Dark Trooper unit and put it anywhere on the battlefield beyond range 2 of enemy units, and that basically counts as one of its 2 activations. But bearing in mind they're sort of plodding and they're only speed 1, that can be an absolute game changer. And unless your opponent has lots of firepower nearby ready to go, it is going to be a risk for them to stand nearby, because there's always quite a high chance that you'll be able to pull one of your 3 heavy tokens out of the bag, for instance, and then have another go with the darks. So it is potentially quite a scary thing to just drop down and then get them to go immediately with all their firepower. So yeah, this is a nice one, and generally coming in, maybe I can't be selected on round 1 obviously, but around that sort of turn 2, turn 3, when you're starting to look at objectives and trying to jump them forward, can be really useful. And then his 3 pips just quite nice. Again, great synergy with the darks. If you can chuck this on 2 units of darks and they get their free standby, excellent, because it can't be shot off them. So yeah, just a really nice piece to have around. And while there isn't as much value in giving a core unit a standby, I think it's still potentially quite useful. It's interesting there appear to be Death Troopers in this picture, and they don't get standbys from this, I guess, unless you're running Remnant. So maybe this one's designed around Remnant, but yeah, I think a decent command card, again, to synergize with particularly the Dark Troopers, as most of Gideon's kit is built around them. I should have mentioned about like theme and power for Veers previously, but for Gideon, I really like his theme. I think actually like they kind of went all in on his Dark Trooper synergy. Like, without the Darks, I don't think he makes any sense at all. But that was kind of what Gideon was kind of known for, I guess, is the Dark Troopers from the Mandalorian show. So I think that was a reasonable call, and I really like that there is at least like some synergy there, and I like that Gideon does make them better and give them some tools to kind of overcome some of their weaknesses. In terms of his power, I'd say Gideon himself is maybe a C. If you're running him with Darks, I'd probably bump him up to a B. But yeah, I think Dark Troopers, they are decent, and I actually lost to a Dark Trooper list at the GT, so there's definitely something there, but I don't think they're quite at the kind of power level that obviously they were in the previous version of the game. But yeah, they're not a million miles away, and I think they are underrated for just how good they are, especially early in the game with effectively how many skips you have in the bag. So maybe there is something there, but I think for now, Gideon's sort of high C, low B in terms of his power level is probably pretty fair. Iden Versio, she fulfills a kind of slightly supportive, kind of long range attacking unit. She's got the quick thinking, which gives her an aim and a dodge for an action, which is okay. It would feel better if she had tactical 1. I think I'd definitely trade that dodge for the ability to not have to spend a whole action on gaining an aim, because you basically Iden really wants aims. Infiltrate's a really nice ability to have. Like, don't underrate infiltrate. Being able to effectively jump onto the board at range 1.5 effectively, which is kind of just over a speed 3 move. Again, you can think of this as kind of scout 3, but sometimes better, sometimes slightly worse. And it's a really nice ability to have on a ranged hero. She's got that marksman to make her more consistent, and her aim generation is reasonable, whether it's from command cards or from that quick thinking ability, as I've said. Nimble's not bad. She has red saves, so it's not perhaps as necessary it is on, like a Rebel Trooper or a Leia, for instance, but it's still a nice ability to have if you do generate a dodge. And then Sharpshooter 1, just, to negate some of that cover bonuses that some units get. In terms of her weaponry, she's got her infinite range sniper, kind of similar to Cassian. Hers is pretty decent and doesn't have cumbersome, which is really nice. That is a real problem for Cassian in terms of dealing with his sniper rifle early on in the game. And I think, yeah, just not having cumbersome does open up so many more options for you. And her regular blaster is pretty good. It's nearly a double rainbow, which is really nice. And that crit 1 and impact 1, again, you're probably not going to be shooting at vehicles with this, but it does give you a shot at maybe putting like 3 hits through against vehicles, because you might get 1 natural crit, 1 surge, and then you can impact 1 up as well. So it's not that crazy, especially with her marksman, to be able to put, 3 through against vehicles, and that is pretty nice. But she kind of lives and dies by tack strike, her 3 pip, which is still really decent. I have tried it, and I think there are some nice synergies with some special forces units within Empire, specifically thinking about Death Troopers here and the ISF that get that synergy with her. Inferno Squad, sorry. But yeah, I think we'll talk about Tac Strike more later on, but it does offer something interesting in the early game that I think does really help Empire out in terms of giving you more consistency and an actual, like, really legitimate early game threat that I think you kind of need with the way that Empire is kind of shaping up these days. She is a bit on the expensive side, 115 base, and then if you take her droid and some kit, she can easily get up to like 135, even up towards 140, which it feels a bit rough when you can get like some of the budget heroes that you can, like, you can get a Krennic for normally around 70 points, which just feels kind of nuts when she's nearly twice as expensive. But she is tougher. She does have more damage output. Like, she can offer something to an army, but when so much of what makes Iden good is kind of built around that tack strike 3 pip, it does feel a bit rough to be paying as much as you do. And yeah, the synergy with ISF is also really good. It enables them to be more consistent with their damage, and especially when they have marksman as well, like, just removes that kind of variance that can sometimes really affect shooting lists, because you don't want to be like spending all your aims and then you can't just get those 2 black at the end to hit, or the black and the white to actually get the rolls that you need. So that marksman does just make you that bit more consistent. But yeah, we'll go through her command cards. Pulse Scan is just, again, a one that buffs her up. Giving her that aim is nice, and Sharpshooter 2 when she's already Sharpshooter 1. Like, yeah, it's fine. But again, not as flashy as some of the 1 pips that we're going to see later on, and it doesn't quite do enough for me, this one, I think. It's, again, a bit like with Veers, it's not something that takes away from running her, but it's just not something that is like insane. Her 2-pip concussive blast, if she had Arsenal, this would be incredible. As she doesn't have Arsenal, yeah, I mean, 5 red with marksman, you're probably, if you're able to get an aim from somewhere, because she doesn't have tactical. And again, it just doesn't quite all fit together, right? Like, with a range 2 weapon, you're rarely going to be able to spend the time to quick thinking. So then actually this probably only hits for, I think it's like 3.5, if not quite 4 on average. And yeah, 4 reds, it takes away cover at least. But into red saves, this does 2 wounds. Into white saves, probably does 3 for a whole command card. I guess she can recover. So if you're running, if you're running offensive push, maybe that works out. But yeah, it just doesn't quite all fit together for me. And then Tac Strike is still an amazing command card. Like, you can play this turn 1 if you want to. If you're running Debts with Recon Intel, I think that's quite interesting, because you'd also get an additional move off your Recon Intel onto the board. Does make them quite expensive. I think that would then push the unit up to be like 110 points nearly, essentially, when you're taking all the kit that you're taking with the DLT. So there's something kind of there maybe, but you'd be able to then make 3 moves onto the board, and still get that shot off, and that can do some really decent damage. And it is tricky, like, deciding on the timing of this, because if you play this turn 1, you're probably going first, which is not what you want with a gunline list. But if you play it turn 2, this can almost feel a bit slow sometimes, I think. Like, you're kind of relying on one unit at a time doing something, and when the units you're going to be ordering this with, i.e. probably Deaths and ISF, are more focused on doing damage at kind of mid to long range, when you need to be pushing up as well, it can kind of telegraph where they're going to be ending up. So unless you have, speeder bikes and things that can cross that gap to go and tag objectives that you need to tag, it does mean that all these units won't be doing much besides shooting that turn. And while they will be shooting and probably hitting pretty hard, it maybe isn't that amazing of a turn 2 play. But then again, as a turn 1 play, you'll be going first and it's very telegraphed what you're going to do. So you might not be able to get the value you need off it. So it is still a really good command card. And it's also worth noting that this is not just units that are ordered by this card. This is units that have face-up order tokens. So when I ran it, it was with Krennic, 3 deaths, ISF, and Iden. And you can put out some really decent value. Like, there's some really good damage to be had there, but it just didn't quite feel as impactful as I hoped it would. And yeah, I don't know. It's a really good command card to have, and is definitely a positive reason to run Iden, but maybe not quite as strong as it used to be. You also get access, if you take the droid, to the Incapacitate 2 pip, which is pretty decent. If it was a 1 pip, I think it would be so much better. I don't quite understand why this is a 2 pip. But yeah, essentially the key bit for this one is obviously the free action from the droid. And the dream is, right, you run into a Republic mega squad and you're able to just rob them of one of their actions. But I think as this is a 2 pip, that does just become a bit harder to pull off, because if they play a 1 pip, you're obviously going second, and then if it's a 2 pip, it's a 50-50 to go second. So actually, given you probably want to be grabbing the initiative with this, and it might be quite telegraphed, it will be very telegraphed if you are kind of running Iden up to make this happen. The problem is, if that clone squad goes first, Iden dies. But if Iden goes first, she can shut them down. So it's a big 50-50. And I don't quite know if that's the kind of thing you want to be doing with Iden. So yeah, it obviously, in the right situation, it's incredibly strong, but it will be quite telegraphed when you do try and use it. In terms of theme and power, I think her theme is a B. Like, I'm aware she's from the computer game, and it's not the strongest theme to start off with for me, but at least she does kind of keep to at least what you see in the games, I think, vaguely. So it's fine. But yeah, just not the most interesting theme for me. And then her power level, I think, is B. Like, I think she is a really decent hero, very similar power level to Veers for me, in terms of like, isn't like insanely impactful and good value for her points, but can definitely be a really useful piece to have in the backlines of your army. Moving over to the Merc commanders very quickly, we'll just run through these. I would, again, similar to Rebels, I would never really do this anymore, especially the Capo. I just don't see any reason to, so I'll put the points up here, but it's essentially a support hero that doesn't work with what your list is trying to do, so on that basis, there's no real purpose to running him. If you are running Pikes, very possibly, but I wouldn't even bother then, and I think you have better core options in Empire than the Pikes, so yeah, I don't see really a reason to do this. And as I put here, Krennic is 15 points more and just gives you so much more potential and so much more synergy with what your list is trying to do, so yeah, I wouldn't do this. It's not worthwhile. The Vigo's slightly better because Black Suns have more of a place in Empire than Pikes do, and the Black Sun Vigo has a bit of synergy with them. But again, I just wouldn't really bother with this. Like, you have pretty good access to aims in Empire anyway, so I don't really see the purpose of this. Yeah, again, Krennic's 15 points more and does so much more for your army, so yeah, I really, unless you're running like a lot of Black Suns and really want that sort of little bit of synergy he has with them, I just wouldn't do this. So yeah, I think we breeze past this and talk about the actual Empire commanders. Krennic, you can probably spot I've left the best till last. He is really good value, and he has some excellent support abilities. So not just in his spotter, which is still decent. Again, because I'm a sucker for, I like getting lots of tokens off an action. I did take the Binox on him when I used him, and it was decent. Again, he's sitting further back and he's supporting your army. So 2 aims for 1 action feels pretty decent. If you are light for points, absolutely you can cut the Binox. Like, not a necessity to run on him at all. But again, his 2 command slots are excellent, and you might you probably will. Squeeze in a mercenary for Empire sometimes, and with Underworld connections and Trusted Agent, I think there's potential for some really nice synergy with Krennic and some mercenary troops going on, especially Din Djarin. And to go with that, he has Compel and he has Cunning, and Compel is just great for your action economy again, and if it enables you to get an additional action with a core unit which might let you score an objective or something, that is absolutely huge. And when you have when you are probably going to be running slightly light on units anyway, being able to get each of those units to do more just feels really good. So it's a really nice ability to have around. Cunning is also excellent. If you really need to go first, you can probably do his 1-pip and then just hope that you spin that roulette wheel and land on the units you want to land on. But with improv and things like that, you probably have a shot at going with what you want to go with first anyway. So yeah, that's a really nice thing to have around. And Cunning is always just a great ability. Like, I think it's part of what makes Dooku as strong as he is. Like, on that 1-pip turn, you can guarantee having that control over when you want to go. The Entourage Death Trooper is very decent. Like, if you ever need to fit in 4 Death Troopers for whatever reason, you can do that. And since the buff, there's maybe more reason to do it. The other thing you can do is just run 1, and then as long as they're in range 2, you're always getting order control, which is great. A bit of order control in Empire never hurt anything. It does suck you can't get the comms relay thing anymore. Like, that was nice for chaining down to a unit, which is always a valuable thing to kind of use them to generate an order on a different unit, which you might want to go with more than the deaths. And yeah, I'll talk about his command cards now in more detail, but they are really decent, and especially for kind of the lower price you pay for getting him in your army, I think they can be super valuable. I think his theme's B. Like, I don't think there's anything crazy special here in terms of his theme. Like, he doesn't really stand out as a particularly thematic character for me. Maybe the Death Trooper, Entourage Death Trooper, does lend itself a bit more to it, and his command cards are quite fun. Maybe I've been a bit harsh with B. Maybe high B, low A for theme. His power level is an A. I think you can make an argument for lower level S tier in Empire. I think Krennic is maybe actually one of the better things they have going for them. I think maybe just because he doesn't do anything like insanely flashy, I've probably been a bit harsh on him, but I fully understand the argument for S tier just in terms of the value for points here, but I'll leave him at an A tier for now. So I've spoken about his 1-pip. You basically do the sort of random order shuffle, pull 3 out, and then you put them on a card and you can look at them at any time. So it has some interesting synergy with independence, obviously. So, if you've got bounty hunters, i.e. Din Djarin, with a good independent, then you might still be able to get that operative token in your sort of on your card and hold on to that independent while still having order control. Also in Empire, you're probably rarely getting beyond 10, 11 acts. So actually, if you have an improv on Krennic and you have 3 orders out of the stack, it's fairly likely that you'll get whatever you want to. Like, you basically have 5 shots at hitting what you want to hit. So it's actually quite unlikely you'll miss unless you've only got one thing, I guess. But for instance, if you had Krennic and Vader in a list and you wanted to hit Vader to go first with this, then you have 2 commander tokens. You've got sort of 3 shots at it with this command card and then 2 shots at it with an improv and the order token you pull out first. So you'd be quite upset if you missed after all 5 of those. It will happen sometimes, obviously, but you have a pretty reasonable shot at hitting with one of those. So yeah, I don't think it's particularly like thematic in terms of voracious ambition, giving you a random selection of order tokens, but still a pretty good command card to have around. Deploy the Garrison. This is just a bit similar to kind of Gideon's 3-pip in terms of just having a free standby can be really useful. The advantage with this one is it's any trooper units, so this can go on Commander Vader, and Commander Vader can't be suppressed, so that's really good. It can also, with the Trusted Agent or even Underworld Connections, if you just give an order straight up, can go to, I'm going to say it again, Din Djarin or something like that. Like, there are lots of things you could do with this. I believe this can also hit a Dewback because the Dewback is a creature trooper. I haven't tried that, but probably need to look up the FAQ for that one to see if that works. But yeah, just having a standby ready to go at the start of the round is really powerful, especially when it can't be removed on Vader. And then Annihilation Looms. I think this one's fine. When you have if you've got the Flat Courage from Vader and the Compel and things like that from Krennic and from Vader, this works okay, and you probably still will get the actions you want to get off anyway. But yeah, it basically you'd play this hoping that it hurts your opponent more than it hurts you, and given a decent proportion of your opponents will be droids where it won't have much or any impact, and clones where it doesn't have as much impact because they're higher courage. So this only kind of really messes with other Empire lists, Rebels and Shadow Collective, all of which are kind of valid. But yeah, I'm not certain this one's worth running. But if you do want to run it and you have kind of a plan to work around it with your compel and your high courage, then I think it's a fairly valid take. And the final one, I don't know if this one's going to be particularly controversial. Perhaps the strength of my opinions on this will be slightly controversial, but I think Vader is the best thing Empire has going for them by a fair distance. I think he is not as consistent as you would like him to be, but as I've said at the top here, he can win or lose you, I think, almost any game. I think he is that impactful. And I think what he enables you to do is he enables you to have such an impact on what your opponent is actually able to do with his command cards that he just becomes the focal point of the whole game, and he will drag so much attention towards him because with his potential for 6 PS3, which doesn't happen a lot but can happen, that is a squad killer in one attack, and there are not many units aside from maybe Anakin and high roll with Grievous, I guess, and Maul, that can do that. And I think the potential for him to do that is just so scary, and the PS3 makes it so consistent. Even against units with Impervious, like they're just having to roll so many dice, they probably will blank on quite a few of them. So it can be super impactful. The inbuilt deflect is great. It does just probably keep him alive an extra action or two maybe, and that's huge. Personally, I think Vader does need a little bit of a buff, which is a bit crazy when I'm saying he's got a power level of S, but I think it does just feel. I think he should get reliable 1 essentially base, and then I think his command card, which I'll talk about in a second, that gives him reliable 2, would then take him to reliable 3. I think he just needs a little bit more surge access just to give him that little bit more consistency, because when you're rolling just base red dice, it does feel really bad, and it does just lose you a bit of that consistency in your defense. So having deflect is great, but no surge defend in melee, it does feel rough. Immune Pierce, obviously standard fare. Master Force is really useful, and Relentless, not just charge, Relentless, which is why you take Saber Throw on him. Relentless Saber Throw probably gets you 3 PS3 most of the time, and with Impact 3, it also just slices straight through armor. So if you just want to do 3 wounds to something, then you take Saber Throw, and it is a useful ability to have around. As I've said, his Saber's not normally good for 6 PS3. It averages, I think, just below 5 PS3 on average, which is still really decent, and, can sweep up an upgraded core squad or something like that really consistently. And there's something to be said for just kind of removing, and this sounds bad, but removing the potential for variance from your opponent's defense rolls. Like, unless they're on red defense die, this is normally going to kill a core squad in 1 hit. And if they're on red defense die, they need to roll really hot. They need to roll 4 out of the 5 saves in order for their squad to survive, if they had 5 models in the unit. So yeah, it is a really useful ability to have around. Yeah, his infinite courage is just fantastic. Really helps kind of buff up your troopers around him as well, and just means, like I've said, there's some synergy with standbys and things like that where they can't actually be removed. And yeah, he's always going to be getting his actions off. It's just whether he's alive to do them. He really does feel like this kind of like force moving across the battlefield. Like, you can't slow him down. You can't do anything. He just literally, like, he's implacable, right? Like the command card, but he just like keeps pushing forward. And it's just whether or not your opponent has the weight of dice to actually drag him down. And most of the time in today's game, they are actually going to have that, but it's just whether or not he is able to do enough damage before he drops to gain his value back. We'll talk about his command cards. I think he has the best command cards in the game. I actually don't even know who's that close. I would actually think every single one of his command cards is straight up good. Some of them are even more insane than others, but every single one of them has a purpose and is decent in its slot. So we'll go through them kind of pip by pip. Implacable, you get 2 shots with Vader, and that's wild. I mean, obviously Anakin gets this baked in with with his abilities, which is fine. But yeah, just having another shot with Vader, and also worth noting, he gets all his force stuff back, so he gets pushback if you're running push. It's just crazy what he can do, what you can do with this. And in terms of the kit I'd run on Vader before I go any further, I think you don't always have to fill his command slot. Again, you can fill it improv, trusted agent, or whatever. Maybe trusted agent's actually a bit better now, given how order hungry he is and the fact that every single one of his command cards orders himself, apart from new ways to motivate them. So trusted agent might be pretty good on him. But in terms of force powers, you have to bring burst. I think it's almost obligatory. Yeah, I think you have to. I bring force push and I would bring saber throw. I think those are the kind of easy defaults to take with Vader. With the new force powers, I think there are arguments to maybe bring slightly different ones. Like, I think clairvoyance might be the one that could start to sneak in, just because he is so pivotal to your plans. And if you have a dreadful roll, it might just be enough to drag him out of there. I think force guidance, just for some search access, isn't actually that terrible. It just feels bad, especially as you'd have to refresh this each turn with his Master of the Force. So even though you really do want for some surge access, I don't think this is perhaps the best way to get it. And then the other one's Force Choke, which can be quite nice if, somehow your opponent pulls out an insane defense roll and does survive. Just having that ability to finish off a core squad you're trapped in or something could be really valuable. So I think Choke, Clairvoyance and Guidance might be the ones that could just sneak in, but I think for me, Burst, Force Push and Saber Throw is the way to go. But yeah, I've kind of spoken about Implacable, and he gets a dodge as well, which is quite nice. Generally, you'll be playing Implacable either on your burst of speed turn, which is just wild, like the speed 3, speed 3, speed 3, speed 3, if you want it, is pretty crazy. Or you're playing it when you're already locked in melee with something, and then you're just basically getting double attacks and double use of force powers as well, which is also great. So yeah, always a valuable card to have around, and I think, am I going to say it's his best one? It's close to his best one. Definitely top 3. Next one is Vader's Might. Basically force push, but bigger. And it could really, essentially, if you, there are some big squads running around. I'm thinking about Bright Tree here, for instance. Then this could be really valuable. It's, as I said, force push, but more. And it can also hit support units, so you can put stuff in place where it can't actually get down from because they can't climb, which is quite an interesting little trick that you could have. But yeah, this is, if you think you're going to need, or if you're not running force push, this is kind of a bit of a get out of jail free card sometimes. And those white defense die can occasionally go off and do some pretty decent damage, and yeah, just a really decent command card to have in your arsenal. I think such is the power of Vader's command cards that this probably isn't one of his better ones, but obviously becomes significantly better if you're not going in for force push and want to save some points. So situationally really strong. If you've not got force push, probably less essential. Moving on to what I think is his worst command card, which is still really good. So essentially, any wounds that Vader suffers, whoever's attacking him those as well, and procs off melee and off ranged attacks, which is really nice as well. So not only would you get deflect if you're being shot by a ranged attack, but you'd also get any additional damage that did come through, and this could be really brutal. Where I think this is probably at its best is when you're being attacked by another really high value unit, either in ranged or melee. And yeah, if you're being whacked by an Anakin or something, or a Yoda, then they have less HP than you do. So you while you might take some damage, they'll probably, each of their HP is kind of more essential to them than it is to you. So this is one of the more situational ones, and also I think just feels a bit odd in a way, because you're kind of hoping to take damage with this one, and I think hoping to take damage on one of your most important units always feels a bit weird. So not perhaps one of the ones that I would prefer to take, but again, perhaps similar to Vader's Might, situationally really nice to have in your arsenal. New ways to motivate them. It's great if you want to get free actions on the classic synergy with this one was with Din Djarin, who if you take tenacity, you can basically do two moves and then an attack, so he gets like kind of relentless in a way. And then obviously you've also brought that tenacity for the extra red dice and things like that. Also works on the dewback with tenacity and things like that. And I think, as you see with Maul sometimes, the ability to just do one wound to something that you're in control of can be really useful if you are using tenacity or if you have abilities that proc off being damaged. So that's a really nice thing to have. And yeah, I think this is still a really useful one to have, and can order any troopers. And again, it's not just ones that are ordered by this card, it's any with a face-up order token. So if you do have some shenanigans with spreading out orders further and things like that, you can really use this kind of spread orders around quite effectively. So yeah, a really good one. And again, I'd put this one in his top 3 just for the action economy you can gain from other units. It is a little disappointing this doesn't work on Vader. I kind of understand why they've done that, because again, if you had burst of speed, you could just go 1, 2, 3 with Vader, and that would probably feel a bit much. So I understand why it's not included on Vader, but a really nice one to have, and means that you don't always have to put orders on Vader when you're running him, even though you probably will want to most of the time. Darkness Descends. To infiltrate or not to infiltrate? The answer on Commander Vader, I think, is to nearly always infiltrate. I think there's a very small niche where you don't need to, if you think you're in a kind of gun line versus gun line, and it's going to result in a lot of shooting and people not pushing up that aggressively, and you kind of want to use your Vader a bit more defensively to kind of buy you more time later in the game. But the ability for Vader to infiltrate and burst of speed on turn 1 should not be underestimated. You can see it with, there's Maul's command card that gives him an ability as well to, and if he has burst of speed, he can do that speed 3 thing as well up the board. It's just crazy. Like, obviously infiltrate gets you to range 1.5. Speed 3 is range 1.33. So this gets you well past the center line of the board, kind of up to, I think, about range 4. And if you're on like a breakthrough or a close the pocket or something, the threat range is just ridiculous, and your opponent has to respect it. It's a bit like, a sleeper cell or something. If they sit too far forward with any unit, they're risking it being attacked. So either they do it en masse and just accept they're going to be attacked, or they have to sit further back and respect where Darkness Descends is going to come down. But yeah, basically the way to think of infiltrating Vader is, it effectively, by infiltrating, you save having to spend your first 2 actions moving onto the board. You can use those first 2 actions to move further up the board. So basically, in my opinion, gets you an extra turn of Vader being Vader. And when you're spending probably over 200 points on a unit, if a command card lets you attack with him an extra time, absolutely worth it. And so I think the answer, even though it feels bad to lose that reliable 2, which is why I think you should have reliable 1, I think it's still worth it. Also, if you're running Saber Throw, your threat range is almost the entire board. So that's always a nice thing to get off. And again, it will just give you, if you're not able to hit someone in melee, it will just give you some nice early damage that your opponent needs to be aware of. This is probably his best command card for me. I think both options are so powerful that it just fundamentally can change the way Vader is played, and as a result, will probably change the whole game. Master of Evil. If you put Vader in the right spot and then get the activation off, my goodness, this can dish out a lot of suppression. Like, it's not uncommon to hit 15 plus suppression off this. And if a command card said you can give out 15 suppression, you'd probably run it. So yeah, it's really decent. Doesn't do anything besides that, but I think the effect is kind of enough by itself. And the one I always compare this to is, Luke's 3-pip that takes 1 suppression off every friendly unit at range 2, I think, or something. And proactive abilities are always better than reactive abilities. So this is just wild. Against especially a rebel list, but also, an empire list as well. This, on average, well, firstly, it makes rebel troopers panic most of the time unless they're in range of a commander. And then it probably means everything else is at least going to be suppressed unless you've got a lot of Inspire going on. So yeah, this is just brutal. And again, is going to give Vader more time to do Vader things. So if you maybe after you've charged in, you drop this one in, and it just means that it's that much harder for your opponent to actually throw loads of dice at Vader when they're losing all those actions. So again, I put this one right at the top of kind of Vader's utility belt in terms of command card. It's a really strong one to have, and will just be one that your opponent is probably aware is coming, but their options are to kind of run away from Vader. There's not a lot you can do about it because it's range 2 as well. It's a huge area he hits with this suppression, so a really nice ability to have. But yeah, that's kind of my run through of the Empire Commander. You can probably see where my kind of belief lies on terms of the power level and things like that. I think Vader and Krennic are a fair distance ahead of everyone else, and then I think you've kind of got like Iden and Veers and Gideon in that sort of middle type area, and then your kind of Capo and your Vigo right down at the bottom. In terms of, Tarkin and Thrawn, I'm expecting them to slot in kind of around Krennic type power level is what I'm hoping to see. I've got this kind of conspiracy theory that Empire is being made deliberately slightly on the weak side so that those two commanders can come in and actually be really powerful and have like a real impact on the game. Anyway, that's just my theory, but we shall see how that one turns out in the fullness of time. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, etc. And I'll see you for the next one.